centers and that CenturyLink is thinking about the same thing. How would you, both of you, how would you explain that?
Yeah, that would be news to me. I mean, that would be surprising to me. I mean, Verizon's CDN is growing substantially in its use with our top media customers. So I don't actually have a good answer for that.
Well, maybe it's a speculation.
It's an analyst report. It's reported that they're going to sell Equinox for $3.5 billion.
Okay. Well, maybe they need to make up, get some money for the Yahoo.
Let's just hypothesize that it is true. Maybe it's not.
Yeah.
What would be the factors that go into that kind of a decision?
I'm probably above my pay grade to give a good answer on that one, but I mean, I would simply say, Verizon, to me, in the market has been very aggressive. I mean, they're courting third-party content companies besides the ones they own to use them. Again, I thought that Uplink acquisition was genius from the point of view of forcing people who want to use that technology to use their CDN. Really good examples, Disney, who did that. So I thought they've been very shrewd in the last couple of years.
I mean, the point I was making, that people are building their own CDNs. So perhaps Verizon thinks there's less money to be made there, but I also think that raising money for acquisitions has always been a big factor. Raising money for acquisitions has always been a big factor for Verizon, right?
There is one other thing. When they bought Yahoo, they explicitly didn't buy the patents, which made a lot of my tech friends make noises like they're not really a tech company. They don't want to manage tech. Maybe they just decided they can outsource it. Maybe it's management.
So it means that the companies, telecom side, are moving into content and moving out of infrastructure.
They're unique to a degree that way. I mean, Google's has big infrastructure and has lots of content, but other than those two, I mean, you don't really see many of the other players doing that.
So I just want to make one point which connects to some of the results from the model, which is that there's just such a strong case for Comcast, or for that matter Verizon, where they have different philosophies, different approaches, to provide a service to, they are very well positioned to provide a caching service. The capability that Netflix built for itself is something that Comcast can build very easily on large scale and offer as a business to other content providers, not as big as it seems like a natural progression. So the couple of comments, I don't know how it plays into regulations and antitrust and such issues and integration. That's one thing. Another thing is that this is the difference between Comcast and Verizon. Maybe Verizon just doesn't want to do that, and Comcast, I can very easily see it doing that.
My comment runs a little bit counter to the previous one. I've seen a number of cases where companies really recognize that in order to do the content delivery and have things like really sophisticated large data centers, they need the technical skills to do that. They need the data analytics capabilities. And I've seen this in spades in the healthcare industry, where a number of CIOs have told me that they're acquiring groups that do IT and have worked with large data analytics because they need to shift over, they need to shift away from a healthcare focus and over to kind of a data analytics focus. So might part of the strategy we're seeing so far to be to kind of amass some of these basic skills so that you can be a player, not so much, move into a specific line of business that might have certain characteristics that would either add or not add so clearly to the existing business model.
I think actually IBM is doing that a little bit. I mean, they have a very, very significant analytics play, and they're going into video in a big way. I mean, between Clearly, Ustream, I mean, they've bought a whole suite of companies that they're putting into the IBM video cloud. So I think that's an example that bears out what you're saying exactly.
And I've seen it at, like GE has hired 2,000 data analysts in the last 5 years or so.
Asking on behalf of Dave Burstein, since he isn't here, that there are all these users in China and Africa and India. So how about them?
So our experience, China continues to be a big problem for streaming video. Even until recently, Akamai does have an actual solution there that we've leveraged. For actually some of our corporate customers who have offices there. So we do a lot of work with PwC, and they requirement was to do it. So we had to set up a very specific, net storage in China, publish, be into China, etc. And Akamai charges something like 20 times the rate or whatever. I mean, the volumes are so small, but it's not like commodity. Now China Cash though is out in the market and is super aggressive. So I mean, we've had calls from them. We just, given the size that we are as a private company, we're really not focusing on China as a market due to its complexity. So we haven't gone to we haven't gone to the integration with the China Cash. But, as we expand our APAC business and as we get big enough to go into that market, we absolutely will. But that's for them. India is fascinating though. We have a very big deployment with a OTT deployment called Viacom 18. So it's a joint venture of Viacom US and Real 18, which is an Indian content and telco provider. They launched something called Voot, which is like kind of like a Hulu type service, but it's aggregating their various brands into one OTT destination. And the numbers have been absolute blockbuster. I mean, from the first couple of months, they're doing multi-million streams a day kind of thing.
That's VOOT?
Yeah, video OTT.
We have that for Star.
Yeah.
Star property
in India.
Taking off our OTT.
We've only put it up with them for 9 months, but within 9 months, it's already been one of our largest publishers. And I don't know exactly, but I believe in that case they are using Akamai. Because there are still some places on the planet where it just, the super pop approach of Amazon and others don't quite get to. But I could be wrong, they might have a regional CDN in play there too.
Amazon just announced that they're investing about $10 million into India.
Yeah.
Not all that's going to be
Yeah.
to sell books.
No. No. And yeah, just in the last, year or so, Amazon, for Southeast Asia, for instance, went from Singapore to Sydney now. They just opened a major data center. So they're putting it in. Brazil, which is a good market for us, which didn't have a lot of, customers wanting to be on Amazon. They've opened 2 significant data centers in the last year there too. So.
Thank you.
Can you discuss how caching CDNs are changing with all this distributed traffic? It's not just about big films anymore. All morning we were talking about big user content and so forth. How does the architecture and the business model change? Not at the engineering level.
Okay,
like
well, I would say this. Akamai was always about having these 100,000 servers, 150,000 servers around the world, and caching into the various ISPs. The approach that a lot of the newer ones have is this kind of, they call the super pop, where they have the content go to Sao Paulo super hub or whatever, and then it's called from there. So it's not caching as far out. Now the result, I believe, and I'm maybe not technical enough to provide this is a true answer, so don't fact check me. But I believe that there's a lot more transit now as a result. So if you're caching into Sao Paulo, and every Brazilian user has to go back and hit Sao Paulo, and it's not being cached all the way down to where the end user is, in kind of the local or regional ISP level, then the publisher gets whacked a little bit on the transit. But those prices are going down all the time. So that's kind of my oversimplification of an answer. But I think that that's one of the consequences of that architectural approach.
Is another growth in smaller IXPs, out in the sticks?
I'm not close. I don't know if you gentlemen have. I'm not close enough to that market to know.
I'm with the Internet Society. We did a deal with the African Union to put an IXP in every country in Africa, and stuff like that. So
Sure. Yeah, it's what ends up happening is, I'll give you an example. I ran when I first got to Kaltura our education practice, and there's this thing called I2, which is this big consortium of universities and public institutions and state,
Internet too?
Yeah, Internet too. And they very much wanted us to run all. We have about 20% of the U.S. higher ed market we manage video for. And they wanted us to, do it on their network so it was all free to their users. Well, they didn't have actual content delivery nodes on their network. They just had a big non-videofied network. Once they put those nodes on, we would integrate to them like any other CDN. And if our customer, we want, especially in our education, we want them to use more and more content. Like the difference between education and media is with media, the more streams you get, the more money you're making, you're psyched. With education, they all have fixed budgets. So if they have too much adoption and they get usage spikes, if you're Columbia or Harvard, you're not worrying about it. But if you're, some small, college, wherever, and you're the IT guy, not yet tenured, and you have a very fixed, budget, and you come back with a $10,000 bandwidth overage, you can get in trouble. So we like the idea of working with like an I2, with an Internet 2, etc. But but in that example, they just haven't put the infrastructure onto their network yet to have it support video, let alone things down the road like digital rights management and stuff like that.
What about moves in the ITU, the user pays, sender pays? Have you seen, is that a threat to the model at all?
No, but again, we're getting on kind of the realm of my knowledge. But thank you. Questions?
Yeah, answer to your question about architecture, at least that's how I interpret it. It was only a couple of years ago, 3-4 years ago, that you look at model hierarchical caching systems, where high up in the tree you'd have big caches, and as you get lower and lower down, you get smaller caches. So there were questions of optimum partitioning and all of that. There were trade-offs, obvious trade-offs, right, in size. But now these Netflix boxes are so effective and so cheap, relatively speaking. It changed the whole story. There isn't really that much incentive for building a hierarchical caching system. You can go all the way down.
We see the hierarchical, though, increasingly with storage, where people will have their, highly available content, and then once it's kind of not being used, have it go into kind of glacial or archive storage, like actually Amazon offers a great glacial storage. So we've seen a lot of that happening, especially with folks who have like the mandate to keep all content forever kind of thing.
Let's give our panel a hand.